And so the mind is dreaming, right? What we are is light. Everything that we take so seriously as the play of my life is a dream. The mind is dreaming. We are already free. What a tangled dream it is. We believe that it is real and true. The thing about the dream is that it can either keep us bound if we believe that it is reality, or it can set us free if we recognize the truth of what's going on. And the truth of what's going on requires for us to take absolute responsibility for the dream that we are dreaming. The way that we get trapped is by believing that there is separation, that there is me and other. And in that, either I am wrong, or someone else is wrong, or the world is wrong. That we get so trapped in this whole idea that this world is wrong. And then we start trying to fix what is wrong. And there's a doer that is trying to fix what is wrong. And it becomes so compelling to try to fix a dream. But we're trying to fix something that's not actually broken. And really it is about seeing from the true perspective. It is about shifting from the frequency of limitation and fear to the frequency of love and openness, reality, the unlimited, infinite, boundless being. And as we shift the frequency, we have this incredible power to illuminate and see what is really going on. That the game of life is not a game that we can ever win. Not within the dream. Not within the mind's capacity. It's not a game that we can ever win. And if we get hooked, believing that we can win the game of life, and that this play of the mind is real, that this dream is real, then we get hooked in a maze, going round and round in circles. Within the frequency of limitation and fear, there's only a limited amount of possibilities that can happen. And all of those possibilities lead to disappointment. Yikes, right? All of those possibilities lead to disappointment because none of those possibilities lead to freedom. None of those possibilities lead to the unlimited. If we are looking within limitation and the frequencies of limitation for freedom, we will always be disappointed and confused. We will always imagine, what am I doing wrong? I'm trying so hard. How come I can't get it? How come I keep failing? How come all my efforts are not bearing fruit? But it's because we're working within a frequency field that is limited. When we're trying to work within a frequency field that is limited, we cannot, it's impossible to open to the unlimited. It's about shifting the perspective. The grace of life is that it's always offering us the possibility to see clearly. But what is required, what is invited, is that in the silence, in the stillness, in the presence, we find a power, a true power. We find the power to rest in our own heart, in our own intuitive knowing. and realize that the mind is dreaming and that reality is here somehow in this presence. That the mind is never going to understand, because the mind itself is a limited consciousness. It's consciousness at a frequency of limitation. The mind itself is moving in patterns of limitation and discordance. The mind itself is a frequency of limitation. It's so extraordinarily freeing for this to really land, that the disappointment in life and the world and the dream is totally valid. It will always be disappointing. So in a way, it's an invitation to not be disappointed by your disappointment, because your disappointment in the dream is about as good as it gets, right? It's a dead end. It's never going to bear the fruit of what your intuitive knowing knows is possible. And that is why, in order to come to freedom and to come to true joy and happiness and wild inspiration, we want to open to the intuitive knowing and that pull and that magnetic longing that knows that there is more, that knows that somehow this life could be better, right? In some kind of languaging, we would say the things we are dreaming of, but of course, very different to the mind's dream. That on a certain level, our intuitive dreams are a remembering of reality. Our intuitive dreams of love and freedom, where everyone gets along and there's this giving, caring, sharing, loving frequency, health and happiness, joy. It's like that dream isn't actually the mind's dream. It's the frequency of remembrance. There's a remembrance that somehow the disappointments of this life and the struggles of this life are not the full picture. And there's an incredible intelligence, a wisdom light that is running the whole show. And what is required to come to freedom is to illuminate the dream. Illuminate the dream and realize that what we are in truth is the light. We are the principle of illumination. We are the light that can illuminate. And in the illumination, we can actually come to a freedom from the game of life. A freedom from the game of life is freedom from the mind and the patterns of limitation. That we start to be able to tap into and remember the intelligence of what we truly are, the flow of intelligence of what we truly are. And as we tap in and remember, we open to finer and finer frequencies. Essentially, we're opening to a frequency of freedom, a frequency of love, a frequency of perfect wholeness, a frequency of light that has the power and capacity to transmute through illumination all of the discordant patterns of limitation. Everything we imagine that we are longing for, we cannot find in the world. So where we're disappointed with relationships, right? What a big one. Where we're disappointed with relationships, we could say, just recognize right now that you'll never be feel fulfilled and nourished in relationships if relationships are rooted in a frequency of limitation. If you are creating a dream relationship, as in a life dream, out of a frequency of limitation, out of a frequency that says, I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, I'm unseen, I'm unvalidated, You're creating a relationship out of that frequency. That relationship isn't there to be conquered by just trying all of the ways to make the relationship better. This is why we speak of it's about taking absolute responsibility to recognize, okay, something here in the consciousness is creating a relationship where I don't feel seen. It's creating a relationship where I don't feel heard. It's creating a relationship where I feel like all of this disappointment is. It's recognizing somehow the frequency here is creating it. And instead of blaming and projecting upon others, the seeming others, it's about recognizing, okay, how do I shift the frequency here? How do I meet the pattern of limitation that's creating a relationship or a dynamic in my life that feels limiting, right? It's not to imagine that you have to keep taking on and dreaming the dream and trying to conquer it, trying to be seen, trying to fix it. It's recognizing you change your frequency, you change the play, you change the appearance, because you're creating out of the power of either limitation in the mind stream, or you're creating out of the wild, open field of extraordinary, infinite possibility and inspiration, right? So as we come to recognize the truth of who we are, we're also not coming to a transcendent understanding that means that we are living in a sense of having to withdraw from the world, a sense of having to kind of sit on the cushion for the rest of your life, withdraw into the cave. Not at all. When we withdraw truly into the cave of the heart, we start living from the heart. We start living as the wisdom light. We start creating from the infinite field of possibilities. We start creating within a play of reality that is a field of love, a field of light, a field of the most incredibly profound possibility and inspiration. We start living at a completely different frequency. And in a way, we could say we're living at a different frequency from the collective. We're living in freedom from separation. We're living free from the frequency of limitation. And yet we have this capacity to live simultaneously alongside companions that are still in the misunderstanding. We have this capacity to be of service in the world by living as a field of light, living as a beacon, living as the embodiment of love. And as that frequency, you don't actually have to do a thing. You're just moving in the world in the ways that you are inspired naturally to move. Like true movement is this flow of inspiration. This is where we find the true Dharma. But essentially, it's not about, we could imagine, well, we have to share this. We have to move in a certain way, but not at all. We move in the ways that our laws of nature are aligned to move in freedom. We don't actually have to utter a word, because the frequency that we're living at is this field of love, this field of light, of brightness, a field of radiance, a field of shining glory. That your heart, your loving, compassionate heart, is a field of radiant, shining glory that just blesses every being that you encounter, because you are blessing yourself, you're meeting yourself, you're loving yourself, you're seeing yourself. You're not seeing, oh, that one's got something wrong, that one needs to do this. That's all part of the projection. That's still the possibility of refining your own frequency. But as you refine the frequencies of limitation, as you refine the patterns of consciousness that are dancing in limitation, then life starts to feel like a free flow. It starts to feel alive and free and inspired. Right? So we have no idea of how this life can really be lived and what is really possible, and how the vehicles will be used in service as we open and refine. We don't need to have aspirations even, because as we start to refine out of the patterns of limitation, we start to live at finer and finer frequencies, and then all the things that we are longing for and that we need, let's say, in support of us living more deeply come in. The right companionships, the right guidance, the right ways of creating income flow, right? And also the right characters that create the reflections that trigger us. Where we still have patterns of discordance, we create situations to trigger us. We create characters that will reflect back to us, not what you see as what you are. It doesn't work like that. It's far more intricate and refined. But the characters will create the possibility to stir and surface the feelings that will invite the possibility of meeting the resonances of limitation and the patterns of limitation that we grew up in, so that we can transmute them. And we have this possibility of moving in these situations, taking complete responsibility and realizing, okay, I'm creating this, so I can shift it. I have the power to shift this. By meeting the discordance, the sensations and the frequencies of discordance and in the nervous system, transmuting it and moving from a deeper truth and saying, okay, actually, no, that this doesn't feel aligned. Step away. You start stepping away from relationships and situations that don't feel aligned, not with any malice or malintent or blame or projection, but just because you're so aligned with the heart that the story starts to collapse, that the dream starts to collapse. Things fall away that no longer serve. And then there's this glorious opportunity to bless it all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for appearing. Thank you to this dream, for creating the appearance of these characters in this play that have offered the extraordinary possibility to feel the feelings and to move from a deeper place, to refine the frequencies, right? But essentially that gratitude, of course, is really for yourself. It's like a divine gratitude. In a way, we could even say it's the divine's gratitude for you. The divine grateful for the divine possibility that the divine will create itself in a stream, a flow of limitation, whilst never leaving itself, in order to experience itself, in order to experience itself and see itself in the light of consciousness, have the fullness of that experience, in order in the fullness of that experience to illuminate the patterns of limitation that are that make up the collective field of humanity, then in a way there is the most incredible refinement happening in the field of humanity. But we have to be willing to not be stuck in the dream of humanity and the human condition. In a way, we're being invited to see a bigger picture, see from a clearer perspective that the whole dream of the world is in your mind. It's actually shocking and extraordinary when we really come to realize you're dreaming your relationships, you're dreaming it all. You're dreaming the limitation, you're dreaming the problems. You're dreaming it out of patterns and frequencies of, if you feel like there's challenge or struggle, you're dreaming it out of limitation. And if you see it as love, you're creating the clear picture of reality that reflects back to you the beauty and the glory and the radiance of your own heart, right? It's one glorious reality. Now, everything is made of the same essence because the divine has created itself in flows of seeming limitation in order to free humanity, right? Because the whole field of humanity is like a field of patterns of limitation. And the possibility within this field, within the play of a human birth, is to recognize that you never have really taken birth. Let's say you're birthless, deathless. You're the divine. And you are the divine that is creating this appearance with a kind of a divine assignment. The divine never leaves itself to create the patterns and flows. But there's a refinement happening. And so much of this is way beyond the mind's understanding. Way beyond the mind's understanding. So in a way, it doesn't really even make sense to speak of it because it's not information. It's not information for the mind to learn. So we speak of it in really simple terms. We speak of it at the level where we can shift, where we can recognize the resonance of truth. We're not here to understand with our mind, and nor does the mind have the capacity to understand the incredible intricacies of the intelligence of what is happening. But can you maybe register within your functioning that you've lived this life long enough in the dream to recognize that all your efforts, all your good intentions, all your positive affirmations, all of your techniques, all of your spiritual happenings and experiences, if they haven't led you to absolute freedom yet in the dream, are they ever going to, right? In a way, I would even dare to say that what we're speaking of here is a freedom from the great misunderstanding, even of spirituality, that in this time that gets called the Kali Yuga, in this time that gets spoken of, it's a time of delusion. It's a time of great corruption within the field, where even spirituality has been corrupt and distorted. And that is why, if the ways that we are moving are not bringing us to greater freedom and clarity, then we would know that that is part of the dead end, right? We have the capacity within our functioning to recognize that the dream of life, the play of life, is not one that can be mastered in the mind. The only way that we can come to freedom from the dream is to open to the wisdom light and to meet the true master, to meet the Satguru, to meet the principle of light in our own heart. That as long as we are giving power to the dream, as long as we are giving power to anything in the dream, imagining that it will validate us, fix us, somehow bring us to freedom, then we are still in the delusion. And that is why it is always spoken here that this sharing is not a teaching. This form is not a teacher. I am in my own process and I am on my own assignment. And part of that assignment is to be a vehicle for this expression to happen. And you are invited to receive it and move in whatever way feels true for you. To receive it and recognize a frequency of truth in your own heart. Because when you recognize the frequency of truth, it's as if we join in this frequency of truth, of love. And we are one here. And when we are one here, we are resonating at a finer frequency. We're getting more enlivened, brighter, because every time a being joins, the frequency gets stronger. And we're not speaking just of in this Sangha, we're speaking within the whole consciousness of humanity, that every being anywhere in this world joins at the frequency of love. It lifts the frequency for everyone, for the whole, right? As we join and we remember and start resonating at this finer frequency, it's in absolute service to the whole. So we have this possibility to refine everything that feels like my life and the personal. We have this possibility to refine wherever we feel and notice a frequency of limitation, that we are the vehicle that has the full power to see, illuminate as awareness. Well, this is an area that feels bound. This is an area that feels stuck. This is an area. And to open, to bring forward and allow the surfacing of the frequencies of limitation in order that we can meet these patterns in the wide open field of light. And the frequency of light, of course, it refines and refines how subtle that frequency of light can be in our nervous system. And as we refine, we can bring in more light in the nervous system, and we can transmute bigger and bigger patterns of discordance, bigger and bigger tangles of discordance. But ultimately, it's asking us to be completely responsible for our own creation, our own dream, to, in a way, use the dream as the means for freedom, to use the dream to recognize that it's offering us a reflection. And if we don't get stuck in the dream, imagining that we can fix the dream and that we're here to somehow be a hero of the dream, that we're not getting lost in personas and archetypes and ideas, that we're here to come to a complete freedom from the dream. We're here to heal and resolve all of the protections and conditionings that are, let's say, under the big umbrella of the frequency of fear. Now, there are so many intricacies and flavors of the protections and conditionings. And in a way, our assignment is to bring the light of our knowing, the light of our true being, into connection with the tangled frequencies, the tangled patterns. Our assignment is to bring the light into connection with these places of discordance in order to bring in the light, bring in the illumination, bring in the frequency of love, illumination, of purity, of the pristine, so that it can create a reflection where these places that feel to be discordant and limited can remember the essence, right? Because these places that feel to be limited and discordant, these places too are love. The only reason you don't see that is because you're living in a dream, a Maya. You're living in a dream layer, which is like a layer of fear, like a fog, overlaid the field of love. And you're believing that it's all true. You're living in a story field. And in that, you're creating characters that absolutely self-perpetuate your limitation, so that you have the possibility of seeing through. But here you can see that if you're in this fog and you're living in projection and you're trying to process mentally, psychologically, you're constantly going to keep repeating the same patterns, because it's all happening within the dream, all happening within a fog. The whole sticky Maya. You can keep creating a better dream. You can find new techniques to dream yourself free in. And you're going to always end in disappointment, because until you actually pull all the power back into your own heart, you will never feel an autonomy and freedom. You will always feel dependent and disappointed upon the ones that you're dependent upon, because you're trying to look for validation in beings that cannot validate you, because they're bound in their own patterns of limitation. So it's truly to not be concerned with anyone else. Give up the projection, give up thinking that you see others and you see what they need to do and the work they need to do. Be only absolutely concerned with your own inner functioning and your own refinement. Because as you refine, it's actually the greatest service to your companions and your loved ones. And you know, that is why I would say here that my only responsibility is for the sincerity of my own integrity and refinement, right? I don't have a responsibility for you. I don't have a responsibility for the Sangha. Like, how could I? That would be the dream. That would be some kind of dream where someone is responsible for someone else. Now, sometimes the mind might want that. They might want to give the power to an idea that there's a teacher or there are beings that have the power to bring me to freedom. But it's not true. That whole play is part of the dream. That whole play is part of the dream. And at the moment, that dream is very distorted. Now, at times, you will dream in the right kind of guidance and companionship. But you have to discern, right? You have to discern. There are whole crazy dreams of communities with gurus where beings are bound in devotion and discipleship. And they're not coming to freedom, right? That's part of the Maya, right? It's part of drinking the Kool-Aid and the Maya. And in a way, that's because that's what the consciousness is ready for. If you're holding a frequency, I'm disempowered, I don't have a right to be, I'm not worthy of divinity, you will create a situation where you remain disempowered, and that you're giving your power to an imagined idea that someone else has the power. And if I bow down to that other one, then I will be free, right? Now you have to explore in your own functioning whether you're bound in a relationship like that, or whether you are being freed in a relationship like that. Because there are relationships with guides and companions that will support freedom, but there's so much discordance, even within the world of spirituality, that if we're afraid to step into the power of recognition that we are the light, if we're holding frequencies that believe I'm not the light, but that one is, or I'm looking for the light, I'm looking for someone to guide me, someone to show me the light. If we believe that someone else will give us or validate us, then we are holding a frequency of limitation, and we will keep perpetuating that. And we can perpetuate that through lifetimes, right? But what's happening in the shifting of the collective consciousness of humanity is that there's enough light and enough space coming in that we have the possibility of freeing ourselves from these kind of dynamics. We have the possibility, right? You know, the great beings of our time, they didn't create Christianity and Buddhism. Let's use this just as a simple example, right? The Christ and the Buddha didn't create Christianity and Buddhism. They were independent beings that were just absolutely focused upon their own refinement. And they spoke about their own direct experience. It was other beings that created out of interpretation. And then those systems and lineages, they hold, of course, an essence of purity, but they've been created and interpreted and interpreted. What we are being invited to at this time, here, on this planet, in these human lives, is not to discard, but to recognize the essence at the heart of all teachings, all lineages, all religions, all philosophies. At the absolute heart, there is a mystical revelation that doesn't have any conflict in it. Anything that has conflict or is playing against itself is part of the mind's dream, right? And everything is wanting to point us to clarity, but we come to clarity only by recognizing the autonomy and power we have in our own heart to free ourselves from being tangled in the great imbalances of power that play in the dream of separation, that play in the collective of humanity. And so, you know, as these words come, what I would invite is to really use this as an opportunity for exploration. Don't believe me. I'm not inviting anyone. I don't need anyone to believe what's being spoken, because where this is being spoken from is not from a mind or a person. This is being spoken from, this is a frequency of light. And the frequency of light is an invitation to feel, how does this resonate with you? Does this illuminate and open up a frequency of light in your recognition? Does it activate light in your system? Does it activate intelligence? Does it activate recognition and remembrance? Does it activate an intuitive knowing in you? Because this is the possibility. And yet there's nothing here that needs anything to happen for anyone. You can receive this and enjoy and feel inspired, or you can be triggered and think that it's nonsense and never ever come and listen again. It doesn't matter, This is your unfolding. You have absolute autonomy and power. And this is inviting you into that power, that we gather here together in this. And if you feel inspired and enlivened in the frequency of light of the presence of being, then follow that, receive the nectar of that, open within yourself to that. If you feel triggered, if you feel like things are being surfaced in the presence of this light, because this light will illuminate and it will bring forward the places that are holding ideas. In a way, the light isn't bringing a teaching. The light is just light, right? So even though there are words being spoken, there's no teaching here. There's no ideas here. There's nothing to believe here. Your mind might try to create that. And within the dream, you could create, for example, a story. Well, Purna says this and she says this, and she's wrong because, she's criticizing Buddhism. She's criticizing, she doesn't see, you could create that. And if you believe that, you'll go into that frequency of creating antagonism and a story about me. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Or you could say, oh, that's curious. I feel a little triggered. That must be because there's a pattern of limitation in me. I feel attached. I feel protective of the Buddhist teachings, right? And nothing that's being spoken here is against or criticizing the Buddhist teachings. The purity of the Buddha's teachings is the revelation of light that's being spoken here, right? It's no criticism. It's an invitation. Explore, explore. We get tangled in these ideas that are intricate and complicated. The invitation is to refine. So it could bring forward a sense of, oh, I feel protective. I feel some kind of resistance here. What is that within me that is resistant, that is a frequency of limitation? And can I sit with this frequency and open to realize that this is some kind of protection in me? It might play like something like this. I'm attached to an idea of something that has supported me and helped me. I'm attached to that idea. And what I can see is that if I'm attached to that idea, I have given power to that somewhere, right? So can I actually open to realize that what I'm feeling in a frequency of attachment is that I have given power to something other than myself. And this frequency is showing me that I'm attached, and that in this attachment, I have the capacity to give my power to something external because I have a belief that I'm not worthy of knowing this truth in my own heart, and that I need to give power to something outside of myself, that I need to be saved, right? It might play in this opening. And what can happen is you come to distill the essence of realizing, oh, I don't need to be attached to that, because what that is, where I feel a resonance with that, doesn't need an attachment. I don't need to give my power to that. That when I come into the power of my own being, I recognize that the resonance is actually the same. I am one with the Buddha. I am one with the Guru that I love so much. I am one with that which I thought I was attached to and giving my power to, I don't need to give my power to it. I don't need to divide. I can be one with it. I can recognize I am one with that in the light, right? So we come into true holy relationship, which is a recognition in the light of a oneness. We give up our addiction to being the seeker, the disciple, right? We give up that addiction to giving our power away. And we recognize, I am the power. I am one with that. And in the recognition of that, I have the power to illuminate more fully the game of life and to see all of the ways that I give my power away, all of the places that that frequency is playing, all of the places that I don't feel free. I have the possibility to open to the discordant and meet the frequency and realize all of the ways that essentially I'm bound in the misunderstanding and the belief that I have to divide and give power away because I'm holding shame that I'm not worthy, that I'm not divine, I'm not pure, I'm not the light. Ultimately believing that there's something wrong with me. I am living in a frequency of shame. I'm living in a frequency of guilt. I'm living in a frequency that I believe that I am broken, that I've done something wrong. And we realize that underneath every kind of discordant patterning in the play of life, somewhere is a belief that I am not worthy, that there's something wrong with me, that I've done something wrong. And if we're willing and we have the capacity to receive this possibility, we also have the capacity to start unraveling deeper and deeper patterns. So this is what we are up to here as a Sangha, as a gathering. It's about meeting in the light, in the remembrance of what we are, realizing that there's no hierarchy here. No one is holding the power, that we meet in the light, we meet in God, in the glory, in the Christ, in the Buddha, in Shiva, in the Mother. We meet in that frequency of divinity, and we recognize our own resonance in the heart, that we have this light inside us of this knowing, this intuitive knowing. And we don't need to give power to anything outside of ourselves to truly activate and enliven this. That all that is required is that we rest in this recognition and we open to more of the light by being the light. We open to more of the true frequency of love that is spotless, that we are, by resting in it, by not denying it anymore. And as we open to this beauty, this field, this reality, essentially it's a fine frequency. We are a frequency. We're not the mind and the body. We're the frequency. The frequency of truth is the eternal, boundless light. It's the principle. It's the glory. And we have this capacity to open to this within in our own system. We could say our own nervous system is where this divinity is housed, like the nervous system, which includes the brain and the glands. This system is a very refined intelligence. And we have the capacity, when we open to this fine frequency, to refine the system. And what refines the system is the bliss frequency, is the light. Bliss is light. So we're refining the nervous system to be able to abide in a finer frequency that offers us the capacity then to root into the remembrance of the power that we are, and to illuminate all of the places. When we root in this frequency of love, we find Guru here, we find Guru light here, we find the Christ light here, we find the Buddha light here, we find Shiva here, we find the Divine Mother here, we find Muhammad here, Allah, Yahweh, whatever. We find that it's all the same frequency here, right? In the heart, and it's all the same. This is the mystical revelation, is that there is no conflict in the heart of love, that we don't really need to be having wars and conflict. You see, that's what happens in the interpretations. This is the right way, that is the wrong way. This, my God, my deity, my way, my path. We realize in the mystical revelation that there's one heart, there's one revelation, and there's one divine light principle, and that all interpretations belong to the one, right? How glorious, how incredibly freeing, how radiant and shiny is that in the heart. We don't need to fight. We don't need to take a side. We don't need to stand in a corner and pull punches. We don't need for anyone to agree with us, because we know in the source, in the root, in the heart of hearts, that the essence of everything in the dream is rooted at the same source. Everything is arising out of the same light. The essence, nature, the substance of all is the same frequency. And we could call that light, or we could call that love. It's a way of speaking about it, but it is before time. It is before all teachings. It is before all lineages. It's before language. It's before everything. And the great revelation is that we can follow discordance back to its source. We can follow beauty back to its source. We can follow everything that is in our projected world, that is a dream, back to its source, and find that the essence of all is the same. It is pure and spotless. It is the principle. It is the bliss of being. It is what we call God. It is what all the names that we give to divinity. It is purity. And this purity is in your heart as the intuitive knowing, as a wisdom light. Prabhakar. It's a wisdom light. And that light is shining in the knowing of who you are in truth. Now, in the dream, in the Maya, we meet companions, guides, gurus, teachers, teachings, lineages, systems. We meet all of these things that inspire us, bring us alive. What we are being invited into is recognizing the resonance of inspiration. Recognize the resonance of your intuitive knowing, and let the resonance of your intuitive knowing be known as your connection to the divine in you that's leading you out of personhood into presence, out of any kind of sense of discipleship, into pure devotion, right? Into pure devotion. When we enter pure devotion, there's no one devoted to something or someone, that the devotion is pure, that the devotion is the pure, pure heart that knows itself and has never left itself. The frequency that is a pure tone, the unlit light, the unstruck chord, the Om, the Pranava, that we are being carried back to the source. Here we meet the uncreated. We meet that which is uncreated. We know ourselves as the uncreated. Wow, right? Wow. Nothing to understand, just to receive the frequency, because the frequency, as it is enlivened in you, as it is enlivened in you, you're opening and you're being refined, and you have this possibility of attuning to your own remembrance, to the wisdom light that you are. And then we are joining in this light. And to join in this light is a glorious celebration. And it doesn't matter, we could say, how refined the frequency is, because the frequency of the light, the refinement never ends. The deepening, clarifying, the extraordinary never ends. And yet what does end is the entanglement in the human experience. The conditionings and the protections do end, so the suffering and the trauma does end. And as we are moving through this kind of refinement, we, as this light, as this finer frequency, we have this capacity to refine and hold ourselves. So perhaps you can feel here that in order to meet the deepest, seeming darkest places, we have to have a level of refinement in order for there to be a balance, a rebalancing in the transmutation to happen, right? Because sometimes we can misunderstand and we can feel, well, I'm opening and now intense things are happening or stresses are coming forward. Am I doing something wrong? Like such an opportunity to identify with wrongdoing and the misunderstanding. And yet what's really happening is that as you are refining and you have the capacity to open to more light, so too do you have the capacity to transmute deeper patterns of limitation. And so these old patterns come forward because they're being called to surface, come to the light. So just to notice as this sharing is coming, what is happening in your system, your nervous system? Can you feel the resonance, enlivened, illuminated? Can you feel the frequency of truth? Can you feel the intelligence enlivening and activated in your inner functioning? And there's no measure to this. It's all about what you have the capacity to open to. You will receive at that capacity. And there's no hierarchy. Of course there isn't. It's just a meeting in this light, meeting in this fine frequency of being, of presence, of love. And hear the celebration. Hear a jubilant celebration. Hear the felicity, the true felicity, like an exuberant joy. Because as we refine in this frequency and we drink in this nectar of bliss, the nervous system is refining. There's more light, there's more capacity. There's a depth of presence that can allow the surfacing, that has a depth of clear knowing that this dream is just a play. It's a divine play. It's a divine Leela. Nothing is to be believed. Nothing is set in stone. It's forever morphing. And it's being created out of the frequencies of your consciousness. And we have this capacity to shift the frequencies, refine the frequencies, and open to this incredible field of wonder, of light, of infinite possibility. And as we open the possibility of what life is and how it is lived, it shifts and morphs to reflect more of the light, more of the love, more of the beauty. This is what is in process. And it's so beautiful. So it is just to feel the frequency that you are resonating at, the frequency of the presence of being and the bliss of being. And from here, to look upon any area that may feel to be discordant. Often in the sharing, there will be an ironing out of the field, because the speaking itself is speaking to the discordance in the field and is illuminating the field. And in this possibility, there can be an attunement and a receiving of that depth of, we could call it illuminated healing, healing in light, true healing. True healing in light is the healing that happens when there is a realignment with the frequency. It's shifting the frequency that's creating anything that feels like it is out of alignment. We can bring anything to this healing field of light, this frequency of love, right? So when the speaking comes forward here to ask for help, to call out for help, you see, it doesn't matter how that happens, whether that happens on the surface of life level of asking a companion or me for help, or whether you just open it up to the field. It's actually all the same. Because even here, there's no one doing healing or no one working on you. All that's ever happening here is an invitation to meet in the light that you are. And so in our companionship, when things feel like they shift because we're meeting in the light. You're opening to your own presence of being, your own knowing. You're not getting anything from me. I'm holding you with sincerity that I won't meet you in your story, because I know that that's not true. If I have a sense that you're in the fog, then I will not try to fix the fog. I will just stay here in the light, in the sun, and know that if I keep shining here and inviting you to join me here, at some point you will join me here. But it's all happening in your own system. It's all your own capacity. You have absolute power to shift and open and purify and refine.